What's good, guys? CJ here and welcome back to the channel. Today we got more Stalcraft content. For those of you that are new here or don't know, we cover everything you need to know about Stalcraft, so do be sure to check our channel out, whether it's the best artifacts, weapons, tips and tricks, or everything in between. But enough of that, let's talk about today's video, and that is the best serum armors in the game. A lot of people have been asking me what they should be spending their serum on regarding armors. There's a lot of options, and there are some armors that people hear me saying are not the best, so we want to cover that today. My personal opinion regarding the best serum armors in the game. I'm going to give you reasons as to why I believe these are the best armors of their typing, but keep in mind, this is just my opinion. Whatever armor you enjoy the most, whatever armor you have fun with, that's the only armor that matters. So let's hop right on to the video. We're kicking things off talking about the combat armor typing. This is your go-to armor if you're having any sort of gunfight. Whether you're having open world fights, session battles, or clan wars, usually you'll be rocking a combat armor. And if we're gonna talk about these armors, we have to mention the brand new faction armors, the heavy armor suits. Each faction has a different looking armor suit, and today we're showcasing the Apostle. This is the Covenant armor, and I gotta say, they got the best looking heavy armor suit out of all of them in the game, in my personal opinion. But enough of that, let's talk about the stats. This here bad boy will have you with minus 30 stamina and minus 15 movement speed. So make sure that when you get this, you're planning accordingly depending on your build. You get plus 10 carry weight, the regular MVG, and when it comes to the stats, this thing is a chonker. 279 bullet resistance out the gate, 232 melee protection, 260 explosion protection, 50 resistance to electricity, fire, and chemicals, 200 rad protection, 100 thermal protection, and 200 bio and psi emission protection with 60% bleed protection. It can only carry light backpacks, and the only containers it can carry are compact and standard. This thing right here is a beast. It's probably going to be one of the most used armors when it comes to clan wars, and if you're looking to be the tank, the big boy, the chonker, make sure you have this on mind. For our next combat armor, we have the Centurion Armored Exoskeleton, and the best part about this armor is that you can start working on its armored line very early on in the game, meaning that by the time you get to endgame, you'll already be rocking previous versions of the Centurion armor. This is one of the best and most common PvP armors you'll find out there, and let's talk about what it has to offer. When you put this bad boy on, you'll have minus 10 stamina and minus 5 movement speed, something you can counter quite easily with consumables. You also get plus 20 carry weight for those of you that like carrying things, and when it comes to its stats, it's pretty damn good. With 247 bullet res, 193 melee protection, 200 explosion protection, 50 resistance to electricity, fire and chemicals, 200 rad protection, 100 thermal protection, and 200 bio and psi emission protection. This with 50% bleeding protection, and when it comes to the backpacks, it can only carry light and containers, compact and standard. This thing right here is basically the staple armor in the game when it comes to PvP. If you're looking to shoot some people, this is probably the armor you're gonna go for, because the other one is rather tedious to get, but you can also get previous iterations of this like the Worn version or the Damaged Centurion that also give you an edge when it comes to those gunfights. Overall, the most common PvP armor and also one of the best ones. For our next combat armor, we have the Exoskeleton. And hear me out, because this one is a little bit specific. If you're someone that likes to min-max your armors, your weapons, if you like to have the absolute best in a specific category, the Exoskeleton is not the armor for you. This here is a really good middle ground armor in the combat category that enables you to be chonky and absorb some damage from players and from bullets, and it's also going to enable you to farm and explore hazard areas in the map a lot easier than previous armors. Let's talk about what it actually has to offer. When it comes to the carry weight, it gives you plus 45 carry weight. This is where a more PvP or combat oriented armor type begins to lean towards the PvE side. Having that much carry weight enables you to farm like a madman. When it comes to the NVG, it has a 2nd generation NVG, and its stats are also pretty nice. 227 bullet res, 213 melee protection, 180 explosion protection, 100 resistance to fire, electricity, and chemicals, 240 rad protection, 120 thermal protection, 240 bio-infection protection, 220 psi emission protection, 45% bleeding protection. And here is another thing I want to point out. When it comes to the backpacks, it can carry any backpack. And why is this so important? This here exoskeleton is a perfect pair for the Tri-Zip or for the Hellboy, which you can make extremely early on in the game, and then you can buy some cheap artifacts from the auction house and you will be a chonker. I've seen people with easy 120 kg while having this here armor because of their builds with Hellboys and with Tri-Zips. Overall, that's a pretty big feature for those of you that love to farm and grind out tons of resources. And when it comes to the containers, compact and standard. Overall, a very good armor, but a middle ground within the combat tree that leans more towards PvE, but still a crazy armor and really good for PvP as well. Now let's move on to the next category of armors, and that is your scientist armors. These are the main PvE armors in the game, and they will enable you to get into any hazard zones, especially if we're talking about endgame armors. There might be some new hazard zones that come in the future, but as of currently, the endgame scientist armors will enable you to go anywhere you want without a problem at all. And we're kicking things off talking with the one, the only Saturn suit, the best scientist armor in the game. And on top of that, you can't deny that whenever they do drop this skin you see on screen, this thing is going to be one of the best looking armors overall. Let's take a look at what it has to offer. It gives you plus 12 carry weight with the combat NVG, and when it comes to the stats, it's not shabby at all. 165 bullet resistance, 96 melee protection, 100 explosion protection, 1000 resistance to electricity, fire, and chemicals, and 415 rad, thermal, bio, and psi emission protections with a 30% bleeding protection, and it can wear any backpack and any container. This thing right here, ladies and gentlemen, is the cream of the crop for farmers, people that like to explore and not worry if they're gonna step into a bio zone, into a rad zone. This is the armor for you, but of course we're gonna be lacking in that PvP department with only 165 bullet res. Nonetheless, even the previous version of the Saturn armor is worth a craft, as it will give you level 4 of everything. Hands down, a must-have armor in my personal opinion, and one of the best armors in the game. For our next typing, we have the combo armors, and as its name suggests, this is like a fusion or a combo between a combat armor, which is oriented for PvP, and a scientist armor that is oriented towards open world and hazard area exploration. This armor is a nice balance, allowing you to get closer to those hazard areas without having to sacrifice so much bullet res, and allowing you to engage in gunfights while still getting in said areas. The first armor I want to talk about is the Rab's Nomad. This is a very popular armor for a lot of reasons. Let's talk about it. When you equip it, you have minus 5% stamina and minus 4% movement speed. It does give you a positive of 20 carry weight with 2% periodic healing. It comes with combat NVG, and its stats are pretty damn good. Bullet resistance of 188, melee protection of 140, explosion protection of 136, resistance to electricity, fire, and chemicals of 300, radiation protection of 300, thermal protection of 200, and bio-infection and psi emission protection of 300 with 40% bleeding protection. And the best part about this armor, it has the ability to carry any backpack and any container. This is where it comes to builds and things like that, and making this armor viable for anything. You're going to be able to get into level 4 areas with this armor when it comes to hazard areas, and you're also going to be able to engage in gunfights while being able to flank around certain areas. So if you're not mid-maxing but you're trying to get creative with your builds and do certain things with your playstyle, the Nomad might be the armor for you. For our next combo armor, we have the Scat 10 armor suit. Another perfect definition of that middle ground between combat and scientist. Let's take a look at what it has to offer. +1 movement speed, +20 carry weight, and combat NVG. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, no negatives when you equip this armor. And when it comes to the stats, they're pretty nice. Bullet resistance of 196, 144 melee protection, 140 explosion protection, resistance to electricity, fire, and chemicals of 150, radiation protection of 300, thermal protection of 200, bioinfection and cyanation protection of 300, 40% bleeding protection, and the ability to wear any backpack and any container. This right here, in my opinion, or at least the way I would play with it, is more PvE oriented. You can still work around and get to level 4 areas with this, but you can still tank a lot of damage with that nice 196 bullet resistance. The fact you have no negatives and the fact you have +1 movement speed might allow you to work for a faster speedy build than with the Nomad because of that negative you get with that other armor. So it's a middle ground, but nonetheless the Nomad and the Scat 10, both really nice armors in the combo category. Now before we end this video, there is one more category of armors that I want to bring up. There is only one armor in this extreme category, only for the biggest gigachads across the zone. Do you like to go fast? Do you like to zoom across the land as you fight snorks, bloodsuckers, and teabag other players? If so, there is only one armor for you, and that is the Hound's Exoskeleton. This armor here will have you zooming. Let's take a look at its stats. Movement speed plus 12%, plus 18 carry weight, plus 2% periodic healing, minus 0.5 bleeding with combat MVGs. And its stats, 159 bullet res, 113 melee protection, 108 explosion protection, 150 resistance to electricity, fire, and chemicals, 300 rad protection, 200 thermal protection, 300 bio and cyanation protection with 40% bleeding protection, and it can carry any backpack and any container. So, if this sounds like your type of gameplay, just zooming, even for PvP, you might get shredded if someone even looks at you, but the fact that you can reposition if you can land your shot might end up working out for you. Nonetheless, if you want to go fast, this is the armor for you. And that's pretty much everything for today's video. If you've enjoyed it, do be sure to hit that like button, subscribe, turn on bell notifications, and I will see you on the next one. Peace.